Hey guys, so this is my first fanfic reading, so I hope you enjoy. Peter quote-unquote meets the Avengers by Freebuilder31 on AO3. Summary. May left to Italy for a year for a job opportunity, so Peter has been living at the tower with Tony and Pepper. Rhodey also comes by from time to time to see his nephew. Enter the rogue Avengers. Tony and Rhodey were sitting on the main couch in the living room of the Avengers' common room floor, whilst the recently pardoned rogues were occupying the remaining seats opposite of them. To say that Tony was uncomfortable was a massive understatement, as they were discussing the rules and conditions for their living in the tower. Rhodey was doing all the talking, and Tony was trying to breathe normally. All he could think about was for the kid, no, his kid, to come home from school so they could hole up in the lab and tinker till the morning. Plus, it was Friday, so no school the next day. Tony was brought back from his thoughts by the ding of the elevator. The room stayed quiet except for the small shuffle of feet coming from a browned, curly-haired teenager with his eyes barely open. They observed in silence as the kid dropped his bag on the floor by the couch, then unceremoniously fell on the couch between Rhodey and Tony, then proceeded on dropping his head on Rhodey's lap, only to bring it back up almost instantaneously, whilst muttering something along the lines of, "That's not that, sorry, Mr. Sir," followed by, "Fry? On your left, mini-boss. Thanks." Peter then dropped his head on a very amused and slightly concerned Tony, who was ignoring the questioning and confused stares from the other occupants of the room. "Long day, kiddo?" he asked while carding his hand through his kid's curls. How was your last test? Pete? The amusement now gone, he shared a concerned look with Rhodey before asking Friday, "Hey Fry, how much sleep did Pete get?" According to Karen's data and mine, Mini-Boss has slept a total of 11 hours and 27 minutes since Sunday night. What? Tony swore whilst Rhodey said, "Damn, kiddo, you really are taking care of your old man." "Mr. Stark, if I may." The rogues jumped slightly at a new voice coming from the speakers, except for Natasha, of course. "What is it, Karen?" Tony replies without taking his eyes off his charge. "Peter has not eaten anything since dinner last night." "Shit. Honey Bear, can you go grab a soda from the kitchen and one of his protein bars?" On it, Rhodey makes his way to the kitchen while Tony tries to wake up his son. "Hey, Petey, can you open your eyes for me? Come on, kiddo. Show me those beautiful Bambi eyes of yours." "I know you're tired, but you have to wake up for me now. Then we can have as much cuddles as you want." After insisting a little by tapping on his cheeks a little, his eyelids start to flutter. "There we go. That's it, Roo." At the same time, Rhodey came back from the kitchen and he dropped his items onto the couch next to Peter. They helped Peter sit up whilst holding his shoulders so he couldn't slide back down again. Now that Tony was holding his kid up, Rhodey opened the soda can and brought the straw up to Peter's lips and gently but urgently coaxed him into drinking it. "Drink it, Pete. All of it." Almost instinctively, Peter started drinking when the straw touched his lips. By the time he finished the drink, he was still pretty out of it. "You did great, buddy. Now I'm going to need you to eat this, okay, kiddo?" "What?" "It's one of your energy bars, the ones you made with Dr. Cho, remember?" Tony was holding the bar for Peter whilst Rhodey was keeping his head up so he wouldn't choke. By the time Peter was done with the bar, he fell completely limp against the couch. "Fry?" "He fell asleep, boss. He'll be okay now." Hearing this, both Rhodey and Tony sighed in relief, and Tony carefully laid Peter back down on his lap. "Damn it, Petey. You know I have a heart condition." The room was still silent. Rhodey was taking in the scene of his best friend and nephew with a loving smile on his face, silently thanking Peter for coming into their lives and breaking down Tony's walls. The silence was broken by Steve clearing his throat. At this, both Tony and Rhodey snapped their heads up, suddenly remembered that they were not alone in the room. The rogues had various expressions on their faces. Clint and Scott, the fathers, had a sad smile as the interaction between the two geniuses reminded them of their own families who they haven't seen in a while. Wanda looked confused by the caring and affection displayed by Tony, as he was well concerned for the child in his arms. Why hasn't he been eating or sleeping? Bucky and Steve had a mixture of guilt and concern. Natasha, though it was almost indiscernible, was looking at the pair on the couch with slight confusion and concern. How did she not know about this child? And is he okay? None of the rogues missed how Tony reflexively tightened his hold on his charge, and how Rhodey moved slightly forward as if to shield them. After relaxing, minutely seeing as there was no imminent threat, Tony shared a look with Rhodey, having a silent conversation, before they both relaxed again into the couch. Tony took several deep breaths and looked down at his kid before saying, "Everyone, this is Peter, my kid." Rhodey quickly added with a proud smile on his face, "My nephew." Tony shook his head fondly at his best friend. "Is he okay?" asked softly Wanda, looking up to give her a small smile before sighing once again. Tony replies, "He is now. This adorable idiot has no sense of self-preservation, and his goal in life is to give me grey hairs." Despite the words, he had a loving look in his eyes as his hands were gently carding through the messy curls. "Speaking of," he muttered quietly, "Karen, why didn't Peter eat anything today?" "He slept through his alarm and was late for school, so he skipped breakfast. Ned has the flu, and MJ had a family emergency, so they weren't at school today. Peter was studying for his test during lunch break, so he didn't eat." Hearing this, both Tony and Rhodey sighed in understanding. "You really need to take better care of yourself, Pete." "He's cute," said Clint. This time it was Tony who looked up with a goofy, proud smile, whilst Rhodey was shaking his head fondly. "That he is." Seeing this new side of Tony, one where he isn't afraid of showing affection and emotion, had all the rogues smiling softly. The tension in the air was still palpable, but it was nothing compared to before Peter's entrance. "How old is he?" asked Scott. 15, Tony replied, "and he's already got more common sense than you," added Rhodey. "Hey," was the indignant reply from Tony. After talking for a little longer and agreeing to meet up the next day for takeout and a movie for dinner, everyone went their own ways, with Tony carrying a sleeping Peter to his room, even though it was only 6 p.m. He changed him into more comfortable clothes and tucks him in bed before leaving the room with a soft, "Sweet dreams, kiddo." The next day, Peter groans as he slowly wakes up, wondering what planet he's on. After staring at his ceiling for 5 minutes without moving, he startles when Friday speaks to him. "Good morning, mini-boss. It is currently 9:22 a.m. I have alerted boss of you waking up, and he is waiting for you in the kitchen with pancakes for breakfast." "Morning, Fry. Tell him I'll be there in 5. He groggily sits up after another 2 minutes of staring and rubs his hand against his face in an attempt to wake up further. Maybe food will help, he thinks to himself, as if on cue. His stomach grumbles loudly. Yep, food it is. Tony looks up when he hears Peter walk into the kitchen. "Morning, kiddo. Sleep well? 15 hours straight. That must be a record for you." "Hi, Dad." Peter walks straight into his father's arms and rests his head on his collarbone. He sighs in content when he feels warm arms wrapping around his torso and a gentle kiss on the top of his head. Still sleepy? Tony whispers gently. Peter's stomach replies for him, and Tony chuckles fondly, as Peter tries to hide his red face into his shoulder. He leads his charge to sit at the table before going back to get the pancake pile waiting next to the cooking pan. They stay silent as Peter devours his first plate of pancakes. As Peter stands up to refill it, he starts the conversation. So, Pete, he waits till they make eye contact. What do you remember about yesterday? Peter looks confused for a few seconds, trying to remember what was so different about yesterday. He winces when he remembers skipping breakfast or lunch, before his face morphs into one of panic when he realises how much sleep deprived he was on top of all of it. Oh my god, what happened? What did I do? Please tell me I didn't do anything stupid or weird. God, I should have listened to Karen when she told me just to go home. I mean, I wasn't totally sure if I was just imagining her talking to me or not, but I guess not. And before his breathing could get any more erratic, Tony tried to calm him down, but Peter wasn't hearing any of it. Hey, Pete. Breathe for a minute, okay? Nothing. Oh my god, wait. How did I even get here after school? Did Happy pick me up? Please tell me I didn't swing here. Tony put his hands on Peter's shoulder to grab his attention before counting. Calm down, buddy. Breathe. After a few minutes of deep breathing, Tony went on to explain. Okay, you with me now? Peter nods. Good. So after Happy dropped you off, you came in the living room yesterday and basically passed out on me because you hadn't had eaten anything all day. That, coupled with your less than exemplary sleep schedule this past week, and that's saying something coming from me. Well, you were really out of it. Rhodey and I managed to coax you into eating and drinking something before you fell asleep again. Peter listened carefully, and he could tell that Peter was leaving something out. That's it? Nothing else happened? He asked carefully. Tony continues on a soft sigh. As for school, I doubt anything happened, otherwise I would have gotten a call. Petey, sleeping aside, you know you can't afford to skip any meals with your metabolism. It's not optional. You were so out of it, you were barely responsive. He rubs his hand over his face. God. I'm sorry. I know you are, buddy, but this can't happen again. I know it's a little hypocritical coming from me, but you need to take better care of yourself. Whilst I'm glad you have amazing friends that care for you and your well-being, you can't solely rely on Fred and MJ to remember to eat. Ned, that's what I said. After discussing some ideas on how to avoid this from happening again, they settled on keeping a stock of his custom-made protein bars in his locker at school, along with notifications from Karen when he doesn't eat on time and a protocol which alerts the nearest person to go to him if Karen's alert is ignored. As they finish cleaning the table and the kitchen, Peter asks, So, what was the plan for today? Do you have any meetings? Or can we go down to the lab? Because we didn't go yesterday. About that. What is it? Peter asks with a slight apprehension. So, given the busy week you've just had and all the not sleeping you've been doing, I can understand why you forgot, but the rogues came back yesterday. Wait, really? Oh my god, I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of torn between wanting to punch them in the face for what they did to you and getting to meet them. Well, technically you've already done both. Yeah, but we were fighting then. We didn't really get to talk to each other at the airport. Oh, yeah, that too. But that's not what I'm talking about. What do you mean? Peter asks suspiciously. Well, they were all sitting in the living room when you walked in yesterday. A tense minute of silence passes. Then Peter explodes as he paces back and forth in front of Tony. I'm sorry, what? You said I didn't do anything weird or stupid. God, you're telling me that the first impression they have of me is passing out on you because I'm too stupid to remember to eat. Oh my god, I can't live here anymore. I have to leave the country because this is way too embarrassing for my social anxiety to manage. What do I do? Can I borrow money for a plane ticket? I swear I'll pay you back. Wait, but I don't want to leave you alone with them. What do I do? Okay, wow. First of all, you are not stupid. Far from that. Do you lack some self-preservation skills? Yes. But are you stupid? Capiche. Once he was sure Peter heard him, he continued. Good. Second, I can't believe the first time you finally asked me for something is to leave the country. I'll try not to be too offended. And even if I did buy you a plane ticket, I would never expect you to pay me back. It's my money. I get to spend it however I want, and I definitely don't mind spending it on you. Again, he waited for Peter to nod, though this time it was with a slight red tinge to his face. Third, you don't have to go anywhere, buddy. He pauses. They thought you were cute, he says with a big grin, and Peter mumbles with a little pout. I am not cute. They're gonna love you, Pete. He puts a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't worry. I mean, you even managed to make Happy, the grumpiest man alive, like you. Really? Happy likes me? He asks with a tone of hopefulness, coupled with incredulity. Of course, kid. Why do you think he stops for some McDonald's or some ice cream on your way back from school? And in case you haven't noticed, he always does so when your Uncle Rhodey is in town, so you spend more time with him and less than Rhodey. He chuckles fondly. Peter stays silent as he mulls over everything that Tony has just said. Just as Tony was about to say some more reassurances, Peter breaks the silence. So, did you really forgive them? He asks softly, whilst looking attentively at his dad's face for any clues as to what he's really feeling. He sighs deeply. It's complicated, Peter. You know that. We both acted irrationally and could have handled it better. Do I still blame them for what happened to Rhodey and what they did to me? No. But do I forgive them? That's another story. I'm trying. So are they. But it's going to take time. Building back the trust we used to have as a team will take time. Knowing how hard it is for his dad to openly speak about his emotions, Peter closes the gap between them and leans into him to provide comfort. Tony gratefully accepts his half hug, and his hand almost automatically finds its way to his son's curls. Is it okay if I haven't forgiven them either? Peter asks carefully. Tony pulls away from the hug to look Tony in the eyes. Of course it is, Pete, as long as it isn't on my behalf. You shouldn't feel a certain way towards someone just because I do. You hear me? I appreciate your support, but I don't want to get in the way of your fanboying. He finishes with a slight grin to try and lift the mood again. But Peter doesn't take the cue and instead tightens his hold on his father and says with determination, I'll always be on your side and have you back. Tony reciprocates the hold with a fond smile and he replies, I know that, Pete. Thank you. It's Peter again who breaks the comfortable silence. What about Spider-Man? What about Spider-Man? Tony replies with confusion. Do we have to tell them? Do you want to? I don't know. I don't really know them, and I'm not sure I'm ready to have more people know my secret. Okay, that's okay. Whenever you're ready, Pete. He rubs his back comfortably. It's your decision. So what now? Well, first of all, you're gonna go take a shower because you stink. Hey. Then we can go down to the lab to tinker all day. Yay! With a lunch break, of course, he adds, whilst looking pointedly at Peter, who was suddenly finding the floor very interesting. Then we made a plan with the others to order some takeout and watch a movie all together as a first team activity. They also really want to meet you, so we figured this was the least overwhelming option for you. The Avengers want to meet me? He asks incredulously as he points a finger towards his chest. Well, they are a bit intrigued as to who you are and why they haven't seen you around before. And like I said, they thought you were cute. Why would they have seen me around before? They may or may not believe that you're my son. Biologically, I mean. Tony watches as Peter's eyes grow wide. Oh. Yeah. Are you going to tell them? He shrugs. Meh. It doesn't really matter, does it? You're still my kid. Peter's face breaks into a wide smile. Plus, the look of confusion on Nat's face was priceless. This time it's Tony's turn to smile brightly as he hears Peter's giggle. Right then, I think that's enough mushiness for this day. Shower first, then lab, okay? Sir, yes sir. Tony replies whilst doing a 2-finger salute. Tony watches fondly as he sprints off down the hallway, leading to his bedroom, before he turns towards his own bedroom while shaking his head and chuckling at his kids' antics. Pepper steps out of the elevator as she makes her way towards Tony's lab. Well, at this point, it's really Tony's and Peter's lab. She walks towards the noise and watches fondly for a few minutes the scene before her. Both Peter and Tony are arms deep in an Iron Man suit that is laid across the workbench, with a look of deep concentration on their faces. They are working so much in sync that it looks like a choreographed dance. They're passing tools to each other without even speaking. The only sounds they're making is their humming over the AC/DC song playing in the background. They're both in the same bubble and haven't noticed Pepper yet. She's used to it, so she doesn't mind. However, she did come down for a reason, and despite her unwillingness to break the father-son moment, she clears her throat before announcing her presence. Hey boys. Neither react, as they're too engrossed in the project. With a fond sigh, Pepper looks at the ceiling and asks, Friday, dear, please turn off the music. Though Friday doesn't reply, the music cuts off and the response is instantaneous. Both geniuses snap heads up with a frown, but their complaint dies off when they see Pepper. Peter smiles brightly as he bounds over to her. Pepper! Hey Pete, you having fun? She puts her arm around his shoulders, pulling him into a half hug. When I'm down here, always, he replies, without meeting a beat. Tony makes his way over to his fiancée and gives her a kiss. Hey Pep, what brings you down here? It's not more paperwork, is it? 'Cause I spent my evening last night catching up. She laughs. Nope, I'm not down here for anything business related. It's 6 p.m, and if you recall, you made some plans for tonight. The joyful, familial atmosphere turns slightly tense. Tony sighs. Is Rhodey here yet? No, he got caught up at work, but he should arrive within the hour. Well, PC, it looks like it's just the three of us, he says, whilst copying Pepper's movement on his kid's other side. Are you sure I should be there? Won't I be in the way or something? Peter asked timidly. Tony and Pepper looked down at Peter, who was staring at the ground whilst nervously wringing his hands before sharing a look over his head and having a silent conversation. Pepper removes her arm from his shoulders and stands in front of him. She gently raises his chin with her hand and she looks reassuringly into his eyes. Tony squeezes his shoulder in support. Peter, you were never in the way. You are welcome here. Do you understand? In fact, we want you here, okay? Pepper says. I wouldn't have agreed to this in the first place if you weren't here. Tony adds. Peter looks over both of his parent figures, slightly overwhelmed by the amount of affection and reassurance oozing from them both before he sighs softly and nods. Oh, okay. With one last reassuring squeeze of his shoulder, the trio make their way towards the elevator. Peter is still panicking a bit, but he is comforted by the presence of both Tony and Pepper. In the elevator, Tony and Pepper are talking about stock industry stuff, but Peter isn't really listening as he stares straight ahead, lost in his thoughts. He goes over everything that can go wrong and thinks about all the ways he could embarrass himself, or worse, what if he embarrasses Tony and Pepper? He is pulled out of his thoughts as the elevator dings, signalling their arrival on the Avengers' common floor. Tony bends down and speaks softly in his ear. "You ready, kiddo?" Yeah, he replies shakily. "Just be yourself," is the last thing Pepper says before the doors open and they step out. Pepper followed by Tony and Peter, who look like they're attached at the hip with how close Peter is sticking to his dad. The rogues, or ex-rogues, are spread out across the living room. Natasha and Wanda are sharing a couch, with the former reading the book and the latter on her phone. Vision is sitting next to Wanda, looking at the TV. Bucky and Sam are opposite to them on another couch, bickering about something. Clint and Scott are on the floor in front of the TV playing Mario Kart. And Steve, well, he's on a love seat in the corner of the room with his hands clasped together in front of him, looking deep in thought. They all look up when they hear the doors open and smile, though it's slightly tense as no one really knows how to act around each other anymore. Pepper, like the boss she is, breaks the ice. "Hello everyone. Friday has ordered everyone's food, and it should arrive shortly." "Wait, but we didn't order," Peter asked shyly, still tucked under his father's arm. "Don't worry, sweetie. I asked Friday for your usual." Peter perks up and smiles at Pepper as he mutters a soft, "Awesome," which makes a few of the Avengers chuckle. Peter tenses up in embarrassment at that, and Tony tries to help him relax a little. "So, everyone, this is Peter. Peter, this is everyone." After a small wave and a shy hello, the Avengers replied with their own chorus of greetings. The small family made their way to the remaining available cushion and sat down. With Peter in the middle, Clint paused his game and turned to the kid. "So, Peter, Tony told us you go to school at Midtown Tech. That's the school for genius kids, right? So you must be pretty smart then, huh?" He scratches the back of his neck nervously. "Not really." Tony cuts him off before he could finish his denial. "Yep, he's really smart, top of his class, and a regular on the decathlon team. He can keep up with me no problem in the lab," he finishes by ruffling his kid's hair fondly. "Dad," Peter definitely does not whine, as he hides his head in his father's arm. Tony and Pepper chuckle whilst the Avengers coo and awe at the cute action. He also helps down on the R&D floor and contributes to the development of new and current projects, Pepper adds proudly. Clint whistles. "Damn, you're definitely smarter than Sam and Bucky combined then," he says with a grin and a wink towards Peter. "Hey," Sam indignantly replies, whilst at the same time Bucky mumbles, "Just because it's true doesn't mean you have to say it out loud." This makes Peter giggle and slightly relax. Tony looks over gratefully at Clint and mouths, "Thank you," to which he responds with a soft smile and a nod. "Now that we know you're super smart, how about we test your gaming capabilities?" asks Scott. "Do you want to play a game with us?" Peter looks up at Tony, silently asking for permission, and when he receives a nod, he slowly slides off the couch and makes his way the front of the TV next to Clint and Scott. With a burst of confidence which he has no idea where it came from, he cheekily says, "If you're as bad as Dad at this game, then I won't even have to try to beat you." His comment earned him several barks of laughter from all around the room, further dissipating the tense atmosphere, along with the incredulous "Excuse me" from Tony. After a few games, all won by Peter, Friday announces the arrival of the food. At this point, everyone is engaging in their own conversations, and with the tension in the room almost gone, Peter's shyness evaporates and his sassiness becomes more apparent. Only towards Tony, of course. He might be more comfortable around the Avengers, but he hasn't reached the joking around stage yet. He's also a lot more relaxed since his uncle Rhodey came in, because he feels like he doesn't have to keep such close attention to his dad anymore, with him looking out for him as well. As he's done with his food, Tony stands up from his seating position with a groan. Peter snorts. "Easy there, old man. You might want to make some renovations in the med bay and add a geriatric ward, 'cause I'm looking at the first patient." With a slap at the back of Peter's head, he chooses to ignore the snorts and laughter coming from everyone else as he replies, "Listen here, fetus. You make another comment like that and I'm grounding you until you're 30. Without a missing beat, Peter cheekily says, "If I'm a fetus, then in a scale of things, you're a teenager," which I guess makes sense as it would explain your mood swings. "Oh, he's got you there. I like this kid. Can I adopt you?" Ignoring all the comments again, dad and son stare at each other, calculating the next move. Tony breaks first. "Fine, you win. That one was good, even for me." He ruffles Peter's hair as Peter giggles. Everyone starts to finish up their food except for the two super soldiers and Peter, who is still eating, which Tony blames on the teenagers and their black hole of a stomach, as they clean up the living room a little to start the movie. "So, what are we watching?" asks Natasha. "I think Peter should pick," says Wanda. "Star Wars," is Peter's instant reply, though Tony was just as quick. "Anything but Star Wars." Peter pouts at Tony and crosses his arms, whilst the latter simply stares at him with a dad look. With a sigh, Peter accepts his fate. "Fine." "Fry, what's the next movie on our watching list?" "Toy Story 1, mini boss." Is that okay with everyone? With everyone's blessing, the movie begins once they're all seated and comfy, and silence overtakes the room. That is, until a certain Archer crawls over to Peter discreetly and whispers with a massive grin, "So, Pete, how do you feel about pranks?" Once again, this is by FreeBuilder31 on AO3. I hope you enjoyed this little fanfiction read-over that I did. I'm sorry if you can hear any noise in the background. That is simply my family. I am in my room and I try to do it while most of them are out, but it's kind of hard to when they're not gone for long and you're not that good at reading and speaking. So I'll try and make another one soon. It is actually very hard to find fanfics that I find good and want to read. So I'll post as soon as I can next. And if you have any requests, tell me and give me a link. I may not be able to find them. Bye.